What do you say, everybody? With Andrew Bone, I'm Mick Gillespie, and let me tell you something. We are so glad to have you with us here on Bama Insider and the Bama Insider YouTube channel as we talk Alabama. This is Alabama's Rivals site, and you guys know you hang out with us here on Rivals.com. But as you watch today, let me ask you to do me a big favor. The way that you say Roll Tide to us, or if you're not an Alabama fan, you say that you appreciate the show, is by giving us a thumbs up and also subscribing to our channel. And I got to tell you, this channel is red hot right now, and it's because of you guys. And we appreciate you so much for being a part of it. And for those of you that are actually listening to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, thank you. And the way you say Roll Tide there is with a 5-star rating. He's Andrew Bone. He's our recruiting expert. You can read his work at BamaInsider.com. We're going to talk 8A, but first, Bone, I see you got your Masters hat on. What an event it was. We had a Japanese champ for the first time, and there really wasn't that much excitement. He killed the field.
He did. I went on a guys trip this weekend. We called it a bachelor party. Actually, just as there's like 6 of us in my close group of friends. All of us, I guess, we had had COVID babies. So there's about 6 of us that are all having kids in the next 5-6 months, well, less than 5, so 4 or 5 months. So we're all like, all right, we're all going to do a guys trip. We're going to go to the lake. Went to Lake Gunnersville. So there was about 10 of us total. So we had our bachelor party this past weekend, but it was mainly just watching the Masters. Playing some can jam, cornhole, and smoking a bunch of meats. So it's a good little weekend for the guys, but watching the Masters, obviously, always a highlight in the month of April.
Yeah, probably drinking a few coldies and watching Hideki roll through the field. It was really cool. I've always had, working in baseball, a fascination and a respect for Japan, and they love golf, so it was cool to see them get their first Masters championship. All right, but let's talk about recruiting. We got the 8A game coming up on Saturday, Bone. This is a really fun year because there's so many different players that are fighting for positions right now, particularly on the offensive side of the football. But let's talk about recruiting. That's what you do. Recruits will be coming to town. Can't have any contact with coaches, but it's starting to feel like things are getting back to normal again.
Yeah, it really is. We see that the NCAA is going to, more than likely, and it's pretty much out there, they're going to lift this recruiting dead period on June the 1st. Recruits are going to be able to go to campuses, go to camps, take official visits, see all these schools that they haven't been able to see, most of them at all. There's some of them who probably went to some junior days last year, the elite sophomores at the time, getting invited to these junior days. So, some of them have been able to get to different campuses, but for the most part, they really haven't been recruited. They haven't sat down, with Coach Saban. They haven't sat down, with various coaches or, toured the facilities in such a long time. And, they're finally going to be able to do that once this dead period gets lifted. So, we're going to see a lot of kids on campus, in the month of June, in July. We're going to see a lot of official visitors. We're going to see a lot of kids. They're going to say that they, worked out, whether it's a camp setting or if it's just a private workout, working out for the coaching staff, so they can see them a little bit. Obviously, I've said this for years. Most kids can create a 5-star highlight film. I remember when I first got into this profession, I thought every kid was the best kid I'd ever seen. I was like, why is this kid not getting, 50 scholarship offers? Every kid can make a 5-star highlight film. You got to go back. You got to watch game tape. You got to, really evaluate these kids in person and size them up. You got to make sure that, you're getting the correct height and weights on kids, that you're getting a correct 40 time, that you're getting a correct, vertical jump, and, all the different things that, that coaches are really looking for. So that's finally going to happen this summer. And I know coaches are extremely excited about it. I know kids are extremely excited to finally get a chance to see these schools, meet with these coaching staffs in person, many for the first time. But we're going to see some kids in Tuscaloosa this weekend for 8A. Now, it's not a sanctioned event or anything like that. Kids are having to come on their own dime. They're not able to, spend time with the coaching staff. They're having to purchase their own tickets to the game. This isn't a free ride or anything like that. So any kid who's coming to Tuscaloosa this weekend or going to any school for that matter, is having to pay their own way. But they're also not able to spend time, with any of the staff or really tour the facilities. Now they can visit campus, they can walk around, they can see all the surroundings, they can see the city, and that's a big part of it. I mean, people want to be sure that they're comfortable where they're going to school, and the majority of kids that are coming into town this weekend are in-state kids. So maybe they've been to Tuscaloosa before, but they're also going to have that ability to come back to Tuscaloosa a little bit easier, rather than some kid from Colorado or Texas or the Northeast or South Florida who may be coming up, and then they have to come back again in a month or two, or I guess a month and a half, to finally sit down with the coaching staff. So that I don't think Alabama's really pressing for those big time out of state kids to come, because they want those guys in town this summer when they're finally able to meet with them and spend some time with them and really get to recruit them. For this trip, they're obviously welcoming anybody who wants to come, but we're going to see the majority of kids that are on campus this weekend are in-state kids who only have a couple hours to drive to Tuscaloosa and see the spring game, see the defending national champions, and see what Bryce Young and this new look offense is going to have in store for them. And obviously talking different defensive recruits, a lot of people are excited about this defense, and I guess seeing what this team can do this year on the defense side of the ball, because they've been all the different practice reports we've been seeing how dominant they've been, and I think they've got a chance to be a really special group this upcoming season.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I get the feel of that as well. As we take a look at the Alabama recruitment list, right, the commitment list anyway, on the Bama Insider site, there's a lot of spots right now for players, right? Who are some of the top guys that are coming into town? Anyone on this list? Are we going to see Ty Simpson? Are we going to see Bob, Walter Bob? And then, who are some of the other guys that you expect to see in Tuscaloosa?
Well, still waiting on a confirmation from Walter Bob, but obviously, not really that long of a trip for him if he wants to come up to campus this weekend. But Ty Simpson, really excited about the weekend, because he knows some other top targets are going to be in town. I'm sure he's going to bump into those guys and spend some time with them and try to recruit them. Obviously, a couple other Alabama commitments: Emmanuel Henderson, Robert Woodyard. Two in-state guys. Been to Tuscaloosa before, but they're coming back this weekend. We're going to see a lot of other in-state kids in the 2022 and 2023 classes in town. And like I said earlier, even though they can't visit, just getting them back on campus, getting them, around the fans, getting them just, in the stadium, in Bryant-Denny Stadium, when they're announcing the national champions and when they're announcing, Devontae Smith winning the Heisman. That's something that, that sticks out to recruits. And that's something that Alabama, I think they're probably really excited about, getting these, top in-state guys in town to see. So some of the top in-state guys that are not committed right now include Jeremiah Alexander, the number one player in the state out of Thompson High School. He plans on attending the spring game, so that's huge. Former Alabama commitment, decommitted back in the fall. It looks like it's an Alabama-Georgia battle. A lot of people have kind of, written him off for Alabama. Everyone thinks he's going to Georgia, but this is a kid who grew up, 45 minutes from Tuscaloosa. He grew up an Alabama fan. I think he obviously committed pretty early to Alabama, but, backed off that decision because he wants to take visits. He wants to enjoy the recruiting process and didn't want that pressure on him to not take any trips because he's committed somewhere. So he backed off that decision. I still think Alabama has a great chance, to land his commitment. I probably wouldn't bet on him committing this weekend. I think he's probably going to, stretch it out, try to go to Georgia, try to go to some other schools this summer before making that decision. Could potentially make a decision before, the start of his senior season, but, could easily see him stretching it out all the way until the end. One player I'm really interested in this weekend is Shamar James. He's an outside linebacker, really just an athlete. He's 6'3", about 210 pounds, athlete from Faith Academy down in Mobile. Has Alabama in its top 8, But I think Alabama is the favorite for him. I think I've felt that way for a long time. I know that they heavily recruited him for a good bit ever since they extended him an offer back in the fall. Could see him potentially making a decision, relatively soon. If I were to, I'm not predicting him to commit, but if I was picking one player who I think could potentially commit this weekend, he's probably the guy that I would lean more towards out of everybody else. I just think that he could, be ready just because he's a big Alabama fan, likes Alabama a lot. He'll be at the spring game, so could potentially see him, making that decision. So we'll be watching Shamar James pretty closely. Justice Finkley, 4-star defensive lineman from Hewitt-Trussville, also going to be in town. Antonio Kite, 4-star safety from Anniston High School, another kid that received an offer during the season. Those are some of the top in-state 2022 guys that are going to be in town. I also think we're going to see some other guys have not confirmed with guys like Curtis Perry or James Smith in the 2023 class, but could easily see those guys making a trip to Tuscaloosa. But some of the 2023 guys that I've talked with who said that they're going to be in town include Peter Woods, who's the number 5 overall player in the country for 2023 out of Thompson High School, big defensive lineman. Kelby Collins, defensive end out of Gardendale High School. A.J. Harris out of Glenwood School down in Phoenix City. Another very talented player. And Tony Mitchell, Rivals 100 defensive back, also out of Thompson High School. So those are some of the top 2023 guys who have already confirmed that they're going to be in town attending a game and 8A game, and obviously really excited. And guess what? There's also going to be some signees. Even though it looked like Alabama brought in every single player in the 2021 class, in January, there's still a few guys that haven't enrolled yet. Dallas Turner, he's going to be making a trip up to Tuscaloosa all the way from South Florida. He's going to be making it up to 8A. You got Anquin Barnes, Tim Keenan, Kadarius Callaway. All these guys are going to be in Tuscaloosa. I'm sure they're probably going to be a little jealous seeing some of the guys that are in their freshman class out there practicing already and going through the spring game. But they'll be there soon enough, and I'm sure they'll be ready.
Yeah, Dallas Turner, 5-star, part of that huge Alabama class from last year, the number 1 recruiting class in the country. He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillespie. We love talking recruiting with you here on the Alabama Rival site, Bama Insider. Thumbs up, subscribe. We appreciate it. And don't forget, Andrew Bone's the best in the business. He's going to let you know what's going on. So if you need the latest scoop on recruiting, BamaInsider.com. It's a great time to become a member and get the recruiting scoop before anyone else. Let's talk about recruits and committing during the spring game. And I think I remember over the years that the spring game, the 8A game, has been a chance for some guys to say, hey, I'm coming to Alabama. How about you? Give me some examples of guys who committed during the 8A game, and how often does that happen?
Yeah, I think if every single year people will ask me, who's going to commit this year at 8A, and it didn't happen as much as people think it does. We always see a ton of kids come in for 8A, or they come in throughout the spring, whether that's, some can stop by for a spring practice, some will come in for a scrimmage, a lot of them will come in for a spring game, but we hadn't seen a ton of commitments that have happened. We've seen a few. I remember back, I think it was, 2000, the 2020 class, we saw Brian Branch, make a decision shortly after the spring game. I think Drew Sanders actually didn't come to the spring game, but he was in Tuscaloosa about 2 weeks prior to that, and then he committed about 2 weeks after the spring game. So those are some of the guys fairly more recent. Now, you go back a little bit, I remember back in that 2015 class, Minka Fitzpatrick and Calvin Ridley both jumping on board during the spring. Right, I think they committed on that either that Saturday or Sunday. They committed to Alabama after their spring game visit. I think there was another guy that attended Calvin Ridley's high school that signed with Alabama, ended up transferring, Sean Burgess Becker, but he committed after that weekend as well. You can go back a little bit more. Ryan Anderson committing early in that 2012 recruiting class, committed during the spring, and then kept working TJ Yeldon all the way all the way until December when he flipped from Auburn to Alabama. So, I guess kudos to Ryan Anderson for being relentless in his pursuit of T.J. Yeldon. And then I guess it was back, 2000. I guess it was 10 or 11. I can't remember exactly which year, but Clinton Dix. He was a spring game commitment, and he told me prior to that, to coming up to Tuscaloosa, he said, I'm probably going to commit, and he committed on that Saturday. There was like 2 or 3 commitments that day. I remember LaMichael Fanning, big defensive lineman out of Auburn High School at the time, committed to Alabama on that same day. So it's been, there's been some good commitments that have come out of spring games. It hadn't been a lot. And like I said, there's been a lot of years where, we haven't seen a commitment come out of the spring game. But it's, these spring game visits, they're huge because you get kids on campus, you get them fired up. Then you get them back on campus in June. After seeing the spring game and spending time with the coaches, then you get them back in June. They feel a little bit more comfortable. And Alabama coaches, they know who these kids are a little bit more. So they're building that relationship. It's all about building that relationship. Obviously, this year going to be a little bit different because you're not, spending time with the kids, but at least they're coming on campus, seeing everything, and just getting acclimated with all their surroundings.
He's Andrew Bone, and I'm Mick Gillespie. Love to have you here on Bama Insider, the Bama Insider YouTube channel, or maybe you're listening right now, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bone, people, I tell them all the time, you got to check out BamaInsider.com to get the latest scoop on what's going on recruiting-wise. You throw out, a Tuesday thought every Tuesday to kind of let us know where we are in this world of recruiting.
Yeah, so every Tuesday, it's kind of like an insider report. I used to call it Bones Insider Report back in the day. We ended up changing the name of it to Recruiting Thoughts. And basically what the Recruiting Thoughts is anything that's happened over the course of the last week. Any big news, a kid picks up an offer, kids name favorites, commitments happen, or simply we just break down, a position group. Here are the top, offensive linemen that Alabama's really going after. Here's, what's going on in each of their recruitments. So, this week we focused on the linebacker position. Really broke down where things kind of stand because there's not going to be a lot of linebackers in this class. This is going to be a kind of a smaller class at the position. So this week, really broke down the 8A visitors, broke down the top linebackers, broke down some of the guys who narrowed down their list of favorites this week. But it's stuff like that, and really kind of tell fans and tell our subscribers exactly where things stand in these kids' recruitments. This kid puts out a top 5, Alabama's included, but really, where is Alabama? Are they, at the top of the list? Are they number 3 on the list? Does this kid have a committable offer? Does he need to come to camp and work out? When's he going to visit? Does he have any official visits? So we really kind of break down, really everything about that prospect and what's really going on in their recruitment, and and then the Alabama side of it. Is Alabama really pressing hard for this kid? Is he a tier 1 guy? Can he call Coach Saban up and commit right now, or does he need to wait a little bit? Does he need to come to camp, get his height and weight, maybe run a 40, or does he need to work out? And maybe maybe he needs to be seen a little bit more this fall. So really try to break down where things stand with every single kid in these recruiting thoughts, and really every single day. If somebody posts on our board, tomorrow at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and ask me about a certain kid, I'll tell you exactly what's going on in his recruitment. So, but in the recruiting thoughts, we really try to focus in on about it can range between 5 to 10 subjects, and really kind of break it down that way.
One thing that we will get in the recruiting thoughts is the latest on the linebacker situation for this upcoming class. And there's some really good linebackers. Alabama got some great linebackers last year, but in this game of football, you always have to be replenishing that stock. Give us the latest on Alabama and linebackers.
Yeah, well, Alabama already has 1 linebacker commitment in Robert Woodyard. And, after the last 2 recruiting classes, they've really filled up at the linebacker spot, really get, had some outstanding classes. I think many people would probably say they probably signed back-to-back, the best linebacker classes in the country. And you look at this class, fewer prospects, fewer targets, just because there's going to be fewer spots in Alabama's class. So Alabama has one commitment right now. Probably going to try to sign, I would say 4. I think 5 might be pushing it, but I certainly think 4. So that's 3 more guys. Who are going to be the 3 guys that they're going to land? I think you got to look at who you're mentioning, or who you brought up right here, Anai White out of Philadelphia. If many people will remember, his one of his assistant coaches, posted the video, the Zoom interview with Anai and Coach Saban earlier this year. Ended up going viral. A lot of people assume, Alabama probably not going to be recruiting that kid anymore. But it really wasn't his fault. I don't think he had anything to do with the video getting out there, and it got out there, and boom, it was everywhere. I think they were hoping to try to keep that a little bit more private, but Alabama continues to push hard for Anai White, and he's going to be making an official visit to Alabama. I believe it's June the 18th. He got 3 or 4 visits that month, and hoping to make a decision before his senior season. Jeremiah Alexander, as we mentioned earlier on the show, number 1 player in the state of Alabama out of Thompson, former Alabama commitment. He's going to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend. I expect him back in Tuscaloosa here in June. Certainly somebody that Alabama, continues to push very hard for. Really want him as a part of their recruiting class. I mentioned Shamar James, another in-state linebacker that they're heavily recruiting. I could easily see any of those guys in Alabama's recruiting class. A couple other out-of-state kids that they're heavily pushing for. Marvin Jones Jr. Out of Plantation, Florida, the same high school as that produced Patrick Surtain, and his head coach is Patrick Surtain. So I think that Alabama, even though he's a Florida State legacy, I think Alabama's going to have a chance with him. Alabama's at least in its top 5, top 6. So he'll make a trip to Tuscaloosa eventually, and I think they're going to have a chance with him. But Harold Perkins out of Texas. 6'3", over 200 pound. I think on Harold Perkins' profile page, he's listed at 200. I don't think it's been updated probably in 2 years. So I'm not sure exactly. He's probably in the 215 to 220 range, but he's out of Cypress, Texas. Certainly somebody that Alabama has been in very heavy communication with, and a lot of people think he's going to stay in state with Texas and Texas A&M, pretty high on his list. But he also really likes Alabama, and LSU is going to be making the rounds this summer. But those are some of the top overall guys at the linebacker position. And like I said, not a big linebacker class. Probably only going to take 3 more linebackers this year. So you look at the guys that they're recruiting. That we just mentioned. I feel like they've got a great chance to reel Jeremiah Alexander back in. I feel like they've got a great chance to land Shamar James. They get those 2 guys to go along with Robert Woodyard. That's 3 linebackers. So you get 1 more guy, maybe a Anai White, maybe Marvin Jones Jr., maybe a Harold Perkins. That's could potentially be a number 1 linebacker class for the 3rd year in a row. A long way to go, obviously. A lot of evaluations still to come. And there's going to be kids that are going to come on campus this summer. They might be a 3-star right now that is not even being mentioned. And a lot of this, a lot of kids haven't been seen. So when they finally get on campus, get evaluated, they could end up jumping up to being, right at the top of Alabama's wish list once they get seen a little bit more. One other guy, Jihad Campbell out of IMG Academy, doesn't have Alabama in his top, 3 or 4 right now, but they're in the mix. And I think if he ends up making it up to Tuscaloosa for a visit, which he plans on doing, I think they're, could potentially have a chance with him as well. But those are some of the top guys that we're really focusing on following. Like I said, there's some other guys that are out there that Alabama's still evaluating. They want to see them a little bit more. Hopefully they're going to come on campus this summer. TJ Dudley out of Montgomery Catholic. I know a lot of Alabama fans have followed his recruitment for a while. And a lot of people think, I think there was a lot of predictions that were going on early that he was going to be a part of Alabama's recruiting class back, a couple months ago. He's decided to wait. I think a lot of that probably has to do with Alabama, just because they want to see him a little bit more, just like they want to see everybody. I mean, even though we mentioned some of the top names that are out there, they still want to see these guys because it's been more than a year since they've really seen anybody in person.
He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillespie. Great to have you here on Bama Insider and the Bama Insider YouTube channel as we talk about recruiting. Bone just breaking down linebackers for you. Finally, let's talk about in-state offers, Bone, before we bid everyone farewell. It's going to be a very rich class in Alabama next year. And, Nick Saban's done just such a tremendous job of going out and finding the cream of the crop in this state. And with Auburn having a new coach, you figure that Alabama's going to be giving out a lot of in-state offers and expecting to get guys like Marquise White.
Yeah, White is certainly a guy that Alabama has strong interest in. They extended him an offer last week. Still think he needs to come to camp. This is just like linebacker, a small wide receiver class. Not going to be a lot of wide receivers. And, there's some top guys out there that Alabama's been heavily in the mix with, like Barry and Brown, like Kevin Coleman, Evan Stewart. Those are some of the, top names that they're going after. And only getting, probably signing 3, maybe 4 receivers. It's going to be a low number. But, this is certainly somebody who had a great junior season, over 800 yards receiving. I think he had 14 total touchdowns at Clay Chalkville, and brings a lot of speed to the table. You watch his highlight film, and he is explosive. And I think Alabama probably just wants to see him a little bit more. I don't think they're worried about his speed based on his highlight film. I think they want to get an accurate height and weight with him. Maybe see him work out a little bit because they've got to make sure they're making the right decisions here. Especially at some of these positions where they're only going to take a small number. But he's certainly somebody that I feel like, if they press for, they're going to be able to get.
How about Kelby Collins, another player that Alabama is going to try to target 2023?
Yeah, that's right. We saw the 2023 rankings come out. I think it was last week on Rivals.com. There was a lot of Alabama kids in that group, and I think there were 3. There may have been 4 in the top 30. I mean, there's just a lot of talent in Alabama next year. And Kelby Collins grew up a diehard Alabama fan. We had an interview with him that's on Bama Insider right now. So be sure to check that out. Kelby talked about how diehard Alabama fan growing up, really enjoyed talking to Nick Saban last week. He's a big kid, 6'5", 260 pounds already. And he's just going to be a junior this season. So, we could easily see him as a, 6'6", 290 pound, defensive end during his senior season. I think Alabama's in great shape with him early on, but 2023 is a little different than 2022 because hardly any of these kids have been seen at all. And, Alabama is going to try to evaluate them, see them in person, get a chance to spend time with them, sit down with them, get to know them a little bit, from working out, but also getting to know them from a personal level. So that's going to happen this summer. But Kelby Collins, definitely one of the premier players in the, not only in the state, but in the country for 2023. But this summer is going to be huge. This summer is going to be huge for so many kids, finally getting a chance. And we've hit on this, so much, but I can't stress the importance of these kids finally getting a chance to go on campus, spending time with coaches, working out, hopefully getting an opportunity to see how wrong we are in the rankings right now because of just the lack of being able to evaluate kids. And I'm heading over to Atlanta next weekend for the Rivals camp. A lot of top talent going to be over there. I'm really excited, and so I know if I'm this excited about seeing kids, I know coaches are extremely excited about seeing kids, and kids are excited about visiting these college campuses and making their lifelong decisions.
Well, Bone, I think you hit it all, man. I think you nailed it all. But the one thing that I didn't ask you is what should we look for this week at BamaInsider.com with Andrew Bone?
Well, obviously, plenty of content, and we're going to have some great interviews. Got a couple Zoom interviews with a few signees going to pop up this week, and obviously, we'll be breaking down a little bit more about the 8A visitors. Kind of who to watch this weekend. What's going on in their recruitment, but obviously, there's something new every single day, and we'll have it fully covered on BamaInsider.com.
He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillespie. Don't forget, subscribe to the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like us with a thumbs up, and we appreciate you guys for being here. If you're listening to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast, hey, we appreciate you doing that as well. A Roll Tide basically means a 5-star ranking. Roll Tide, 5-star, Andrew Bone. All those things go together. Hey, don't forget, BamaInsider.com, always the latest breaking news, whether it be Kyle Henderson, Tony Tsoukalis, or Andrew Bone, or me, Mick Gillespie. We appreciate all of you guys. Thanks. Don't forget, check tomorrow. We'll have Kyle Henderson. We'll be dropping Nick Saban press conferences. If any of the players speak, we'll have that as well. Any breaking news will be on top of that, as you know, right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Roll Tide.